In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can enhance your 3D scenes in post in After Effects. That means after you render your scene, it took days to render, then you pull it into your compositing software, and how can you just make it better? I'm going to show you a few tricks how you can do that. So let's take a look at my scene, the way I rendered it. So this is basically my 3D scene. I have a big ocean modifier. You can see how nice it's moving like an ocean. I have a little bit of ground here with a nice sand texture, and I placed a few rocks amongst the sand manually. And of course I have this giant monster here in the middle of the ocean. And in the far back I have this cool sun. It took me hours to model this sun. Really took a long time. If you want to know how to make a sun in Blender, just check out this tutorial. It's pretty cool. I made a very cool sun eclipse effect, so check it out if you want to do that too. But anyways, our question is now, how can we render this and how can we composite it in After Effects to make it look even better? So the first thing for you to know is that I rendered this in a very low resolution because my computer is 6-7 years old, and you might be able to relate to that. Sometimes we have old computers, we need to render those things anyways, and we can't do that in 4K, 8K and all that. So I rendered in a very low resolution. So there's also a way to enhance that a little in After Effects, which I'm going to show you by the end of this video. So first, let's see how can we make this scene look better. So on the far bottom here, this is our video layer. This is just the video, nothing crazy about it. So the first thing I wanted to achieve is having more atmosphere fall off in my scene. So I wanted, the further into the distance we look, the more atmosphere we see, and all of that is, it's just a solid in this color. It's just put on top of everything, and I have a mask fading out to the bottom because the further in the distance, the stronger the fall off should be. So that's my mask here. Now I of course don't want my beach here nor my character here to have the atmosphere on him, so I had to mask those things out. But I gotta say, there's better ways to do that. You could go back to Blender and render just this object and just this object separately, or at least the alpha channel, so you can use those alphas here. But if you're too lazy to do that, you don't want to go back to Blender, or you don't have access to it, then you can still do it only in After Effects. So I used the rotor brush tool, rotor brush that, and basically it's animated, and I did that for two different objects, two different layers. The second one is just my character here. And since the focus is in the background, make sure to blur the edges a little so it's not perfectly sharp. So now it looks like this. So the atmosphere is only behind this subject. Now we're gonna come to a few more dirty tricks I like to use. The next move is I always, not always, but I like to use lens flares. And I use optical flares for that. It's a paid plugin, so if you don't want to spend money on that, there's also After Effects included lens flares you can use, but those don't come with those cool lens dirt effects. But those you can download from just Google Images. Just type in lens dirt and you're gonna find lens dirt you can just put on top of your scene, and that's gonna be on top of that. By the way, the order is very important. Now, since the camera is moving, if your camera doesn't move, it doesn't matter. But if your camera is moving, like you see my camera is moving, it's like an old camera shake, and the whole, it's going into the ocean. So the camera is moving a lot. So this lens flare has to be also animated. So you could go ahead and position your lens flare and animate that manually. But a way better way to do that is track your footage. So you just select your sun and track it forward until everything is tracked, or as long as you can. You can always fix things if they don't work anymore. Like here, for example, it's blocked by the monster, so it's not tracking properly anymore. So you can go ahead and just estimate where the sun would be. In that case, it doesn't matter because it's the lens flare of the sun, so the lens flare would disappear too, so that one doesn't matter anymore. Once you're happy with that, you just make a null object, go under layer, new, null object, and you can edit the target bring your target onto this null object you just created, hit OK, and now you have this null object here. Let me turn it on. Then I'm going to select all this position data from my null object, copy it, bring it onto my lens flare, onto the position, which is this, and copy it right here, and your lens flares are going to follow the sun, and that's this effect. On top of that, I have another two effects, the barrel distortion and the chromatic dispersion, and that is two different effects. You can see on older lenses especially, you can see this chromatic dispersion, like those red blue lines at the edges, and that just gives it a real film camera effect, and you can achieve that with two effects. So the first thing you do is you make a new layer, go and layer, new adjustment layer, which is this one. Now I'm going to use two effects. Optics compensation. If you don't know where to find it, you can just have your effect presets. If you don't have your effect presets on the side, you can go in Window, Effect Presets, then it's going to pop up here. Then you're going to look for 3D glasses, and for optic compensation, put both on this adjustment layer. Optics compensation has to be on top for sure. So you're going to change this number to 15, 30, depending on your shot. You can play around with it, but what it basically does is when I go crazy on this, you can see how my shot is curving like this. So don't go too extreme here. 15 was a nice subtle way to do that. It basically distorts the edges off your shot like in a circle way, and it does look very cool and looks very like it's shot on a film camera. Now the second effect is for the chromatic dispersion, and what you need to do is once you have it, use your adjustment layer. Mine is called barrel distortion and whatnot. This is the layer I'm selecting here. In right view, none. You don't want anything there. You don't touch these settings, and then under 3D view, you just select balance colored red and blue. And now with this number, you can select how strong you want this effect to be, and that's really depending on your shot. But again, you want those effects to be subtle. You don't want to go too extreme because that gives away what you did there. So you want those things to be subtle, and when people watch it, they don't really realize it, that they've seen it, but it's still there. Now, on top of that, what I really like to do is put grain on it. Film grain. If you're part of my Patreon and YouTube membership, you can access mine, but I'm sure you can find your own online, which is basically just film grain. Looks like this, and that's just put on top of everything. And one extra move I like to do is, you see how it's like stretched out to the side, because I'm basically trying to pretend it's a anamorphic lens. You need to see all those lens flares are stretched out, so I'm pretending it's an anamorphic lens. So in that case, if you try to pretend that too, you go on scale and stretch it out to the sides. Like you can click on this button and you can just change one axis more than the other, and then you can click on this again. Now it's proportional editing. Amazing. Now, one little problem we see on those edges here, we see through the optics compensation, we rounded out those edges here. That also means that we're losing material in the back. And on top of that, we rendered in like 720p, which is a very low resolution. I would like it to be a little higher. So what you can do is, you just select all with Control A, right click, pre-compose, let's just call it everything. Now I have everything on one layer. I go in composition settings, and here I changed the aspect ratio to what I actually want. Let's say I want it to be 4K. Now obviously you see this is not 4K, we have all those black edges, but when we right click this, go in Effect, Distort, and Detail Preserving Upscale. What that does is when I scale it up here, because I could just scale it up here and just do this, call it done, that just stretches out the pixels to actually make it bigger without stretching out the pixels. I can do it up here, just need to find the right number. So 290. Now it's scaled up, but it preserves the details. So I really recommend you doing that also if you want more resolution. So you can here reduce noise a little. Let's do 5%. Detail, you can crank this number up a little, and then click on detail preserving. Now just be aware that your computer is going to take a little longer to watch it, or in my case very long, but now if you render this, it's going to look way better. And now let's color correct it a little. So we're going to go right click, effect, color correction, lumetri color. Let's open the basic tab. Make sure your lumetri color effect is on top of the detail preserving upscale, otherwise it's not going to work. So we can increase the contrast a little. We could try to reduce the highlights, especially if we have lots of highlights in the shots. Go a little down with the shadows. Now the shot is going very yellow, so we can try to reduce the green a little. So it's back to a little warmer. Bring up the whites, bring down the blacks a little. Another cool one is the color wheels, so you can bring your shadows, for example, to the green, what I really like to do with like horror films and stuff like that. The midtones, I want them to be warm, and the highlights, let's try blue. So it was my first try, but no, highlights also warm. You can give it a vignette. You can see it is quite a big difference, and I really feel like it is worth it. I might have overdone a few effects here and there, but just for you to figure out how much those steps can benefit your personal CG scenes. So just try it out and let me know how it goes, because you can cover up a lot of mistakes you made in your 3D scenes and you don't feel like rendering it again because it takes a long time. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and see you in the next video.